All right. So Reburied is a Seattle, Washington-based death metal band. Some would point most of their influences towards the old school. There's some death grind in their sound. There's some more modern, new old school traits to their music, but overall, it does feel like the classic death metal is where they're kind of aiming with their general register. Repulsive Nature is their debut, and it it isn't a typical death metal album. I think if you just pick it up and breeze through it, in a lot of ways, it does read as one. But when you sit down with it, one, you'll notice that they've improved substantially in terms of the render and everything beyond maybe their more recent live performances that they recorded and um, their demo releases. But you generally get a sense of like they were kind of just halfway to the point where they wanted to be when their demo released, and that split with Deconsecration was a little bit closer, and this is a lot closer. It's a lot more professional, and the presentation and the production values definitely help to sell it. It is a Billy Anderson production. It's obviously very, nice, and otherwise, yeah, we do get some early incantation-esque affect to their sound, and that's not uncommon for a death metal band, but their influences pull from a lot of different places. And one of the more interesting parts of their sound is brutal death metal kind of touches in there, and not in a like an obvious burst that you'll tend to get, and not really in like the kind of maggot stomp kind of way. But this is there's a lot more finesse. Like these are very finely detailed songwriters. Like they really worked over every moment of this so that every second has a chance to be a moment of impact. And so it makes a very short album seem fairly substantial and like a pretty impressive first debut. Uh, at point, I kind of compare the flow of the album to like an early Tomb Mold album where the ideas were just kind of exploding out of them and they had a stylized sound. But obviously, this is maybe geared towards a different sense of rhythm. It's definitely a different drummer. So overall, I think this is a difficult thing to sum up in just a few words, although it's a pretty easily known value once you run through it about 10 times or so. So it's kind of a grower. I think that as I sat with it and I kind of went through the review process, it kept ticking up. Like there was more and more that I liked about it. It went from kind of average and just a modern death metal album to something I would see kind of on the same level as like a cerebral rot or something like that. It's a pretty cool album, and it's got its kind of own thing going on that they could definitely work on more in the future. But so far, it's an impressive and varied debut that doesn't waste a second of time, and I really appreciated that. So overall, a pretty strong impression. There aren't really any deep talking points, or I mean, the lyrics are very straightforward. So um, yeah, I just think it's a cool thing, and it's worth checking out. I give it a high recommendation. I do think it's one of the better releases of January, but at the same time, it's definitely going to be more for the old school attuned who's maybe a little bit more of a new listener and isn't. You're not totally stuck on the old school, but you don't think that everything that's coming out nowadays is any better. So it's a good mix of old and new, and I appreciated that quite a bit. So check it out if that sounds like your kind of death metal. I think this is a really easy album to pick up and just rush through. So definitely give them the benefit of some details here because I think that kind of sells the full listen on repeat. So there you go.